Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude at Beyond Mystic, and welcome to today's Beyond the Vault special updates. And with me, of course, is the one and only Mr. Bix Weir. You can find his work at roadtoruta.com. Bix, welcome back to the show. How are you, man?
I'm doing really well. It's crazy days, and we get to talk about it on air. It's great.
Crazy days indeed. Yes, we get to talk about it on air. And folks, we're supposed to have Andy Scheckman join us today, too. We might have a snafu on the time zone. I'm not sure what's going on, but if Andy comes back on the show, of course, he's absolutely welcome. I wanted to talk to him today too in this interview with you guys. So, anyways, thank you for joining us here. We're triple casting on YouTube, Twitter, and X. If you have any questions or comments along the show, please put them in high caps. And let's get started. Bix, what a crazy week it's been. Of course, the assassination attempt on Trump. Gold hitting all-time high, and now all of this rhetoric about gold being or Bitcoin becoming a strategic asset reserve here in the United States. Let's backtrack a little bit. You've done some work here with Jenny Moonstone on roadtoruta.com about the assassination. Jenny and I have done a couple of shows, and for all intents and purposes, this is a big movie. A lot of things don't add up big. So where are you guys landing on this on roadtoruta.com right now?
Well, yeah, we just did an hour-long show, and I'll post that later on the private road to Ruta. But the gist of it was, and I don't like saying it because it makes me feel, people say, oh, you're anti-Trump if you're thinking it's anything other than, what they're saying on TV. Assassination attempt. He was lucky because he turned at the last second, and solo shooter or multiple shooters, nobody knows. But it's much bigger than that. And I ever since 9/11, I'm like, wait a few months before you solidify your decision, and you can't be influenced by your bias. Yes, I love Trump. I do. I don't love everything he does, but I do love what he's done for America. But that doesn't mean he's not part of the show. Right. So I try to withhold my opinion, and we did flipped a lot of cards with Jenny the last hour, and it's a little of both type of thing. It's not what they're saying, but at the same time, so both sides knew about it beforehand. Mm-hmm. And they're using it to their advantage the best they can now, as far as I can tell. But does that mean that Trump's life was not in peril? I don't know. Truthfully, who knows?
We don't know. And the night of the assassination too, I was asking for a picture of the supposed shooter's weapon, and I couldn't get to it. I was, we were doing this as a live show. Nobody had the pictures at that point, at least, or nobody can put it into the live screen. We've seen one in the last day come up, the top one there. And as I was looking at it, I was like, wait a second, that's not a magnifying scope. That's probably just a red dot, like the picture in the rifle below. That's meant for CQB, like close quarters combat or battles. It's not meant for long range sniping. Yeah. And now there's all these stories that there's a couple of witnesses that suggest that there were two shooters, one perhaps on the water tower. So what kind of scope was that guy using? It would make more sense. So anyways, there's a lot there that still doesn't make any sense here moving forward. We did see a spike in gold, of course, the day after on this. Where do you think we're going here? Are we going towards the Civil War scenario that everybody's been predicting for months in all of these movies? Are we going?
Who would we fight? It's kind of like, who would we fight?
Ostensibly they'd have us fight each other here in this weird, crazy.
Well, who? I mean, who do we hate? Does the left hate the right? Not really.
Right.
Politicians hate politicians. That's fine. We can hate politicians. So is it the people against the politicians? I'd love to see a war like that. But no, I don't. I live in California. I don't see them saying, "Oh, I hate those people in the Midwest who love Trump." No, they hate politicians. Yeah. Same with the people, in Florida and in Texas. And they hate politicians. They don't hate the left. The left is just as brainwashed as the right. Mm-hmm. So, the reality is there wouldn't be a civil war where citizens fighting citizens. There might be a civil war of citizens fighting their freaking crazy government people.
Well, that's not too far from what the Webbot data was picking up months ago. You and I were privy to some of these conversations where we would see fighting on the streets, but it apparently was governments against the people against the governments, people against migrants. There was that also on the people front, and also maybe ETs. Let me ask you on some of your decodes with JD Moonstone too. Are you seeing some ET involvement in all of this, or is that to come yet? Similar to what Dick Algar was predicting also for this week in the remote viewing at Future Forecasting Group. Like, where's the ET front on this for you guys?
As a matter of fact, it never come up in our sessions until today,
Oh
until
wow.
like the end of our discussion today. I forgot what we were talking about. It was more like, who is ultimately planning all this stuff? It is more of a spiritual type of thing? The planners above the planners above the planners,
Right.
making this reality. And a lot of what she talked about is, what's the difference between a show and reality is you're experiencing both, and people are
Yeah.
taking it. The vast majority of people are taking it one way. And is that anything different than something real? And are the real things not real either? So it did get into ET a little bit, and basically part of the reading came to, this is being planned and implemented much higher than, like the Trump administration or the Biden administration or the people that control that. It's much higher than that.
We
So
find ourselves in the midst of a big spiritual war, yes, and there's
yeah.
bigger principalities involved than the characters we're seeing on the TV set. This series of interviews in the last 2 weeks came out from two, I guess, different angles. One was the remote viewings and future forecasting group, and the other one was Clefai and his webbot data, suggesting that we were looking at this big event starting in or around July 15th. Now, he missed it by 2 days, but I think he had it pretty damn
That's a nail.
right.
That's a bullseye.
It's a really bullseye because he said, yeah, something big's going to happen. It's going to be recorded from every angle. So there's no doubt that something happened, but there's going to be a lot of questions as what does it mean? Where do we go from here? What actually happened? And yes, in earnest, this whole week, that's exactly what we're seeing in the mainstream news, looking at all these the Secret Service not doing their job, whether or not Trump was in on it and all that stuff. So it's absolutely crazy. But in that same interview, or interview Cliff on this, we were looking at the banking system because he was suggesting too that there was big language where millions of people were going to be affected on the financial front. But at the time where he did that immediacy data, it appeared that that data was more from the East. And he was kind of guessing at China more than Japan at that particular point when we did this interview. And as he was saying that, I brought up this article where 40 or so banks had just disappeared in China. They're having this huge crisis there. There's a contagion happening. This was about a month after the Japan music stopped there with one of those big banking giants reducing their bond portfolio. Um, where do you think we're going with this? Like so far, we haven't heard any rumblings. It appears like it's out of the mainstream news. Of course, we've got other news to discuss, but is this still bubbling in the background? And are you seeing some type of tsunami event coming from the east here, maybe completely changing the channel on this assassination attempt here, maybe as soon as the next couple of days? What do you see coming out of the Chinese banking system, Bix?
Well, they've been able to kick the can for a very, very long time, especially with their commercial real estate and real estate in general in China and all the Evergrande stuff that just got swept under the rug.
Mhm.
Don't underestimate the power of the financial powers that be to sweep stuff under the rug.
Mhm.
If you see a spike in gold and silver when attempted assassination of a president, don't think that's true fair market trading. That's 100% rigged. Probably they had to short into it to keep it under control, and then they got to cover the shorts now, so they're slimming it down right now. They still have 100% control. Don't forget they put the price of oil at minus $40 on the comics. That
Mhm.
tells you what they could do the same thing with gold and silver. It's just electronic. It's a click of a mouse to do that. When you don't have any regulators that are the regulators are in on it with the riggers, and the government's in on it with the riggers. And the basement of the U.S. Treasury is electronic trading floor.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh, the government has nothing to do with stocks and bonds. They have everything to do with stocks and bonds. They're the ones that that's what keeps the system going, keeps their power in place, is that they can rig market up, down, and sideways, and they prepare for it beforehand. So their insiders, can sop up smaller banks. A lot of that was done recently. I think we are heading to a point where the FDIC is going to come into everybody's lexicon, and we'll be talking about the FDIC and, oh my God, is your bank insured, and how much
Yeah.
is your bank insured, and what happens when the FDIC runs out of money, which supposedly, obviously one too big to fail bank goes, and they're all out of money. And
Yeah.
the definition of too big to fail bank means if a bank fails that is too big to fail, everything goes with it. Stocks, bonds, checking account, savings account. We wouldn't even be talking about this.
Do you think that this thing that's happening in China, and let me go back to that interview with Cliff, has something to do with maybe like a credit default swap tsunami that triggers some of the unrealized losses that you've been reporting on for months here on the banking system in North America that, yeah, of course, the mainstream news seemingly wants to ignore? Does it put a focus on that? Are we close to that event in your view?
I don't think it's anything out of the control of the controllers of the system. I think it's, no system today is actually sound. The banking system in the United States is completely underwater. They just lie, cheat, and steal better than other countries. China is pretty damn good at it. After they lost their shit in 2008 because of the all the mortgage-backed securities that they were forced to buy from the U.S., they have pretty much taken control of their stock market. They have two stock markets, one for foreigners and one for the domestic. And when the shit falls apart, they'll just keep their domestic stock market and put the foreigners' stock value at zero. And then they'll nationalize all the factories that the big corporations built in China, and voila, they've got plenty of customers. They don't need fiat money, so that's the end game. And the end game, I think, is coming before the election. I think she will invade Taiwan, take over Taiwan pretty easily. We'll bitch and moan, but there's no leadership in the United States anymore. So it's like, there's nothing you can do about it. It was always in the cards. Hopefully it will happen without shots having to be fired.
Speaking of G, without the shots being fired, there might have been an attempt there as well. Apparently he had a stroke the other day. I don't know if that was food poisoning. Did you guys look at that, or did Jenny pull cards on that too on your side?
No, we didn't look at that. I saw that and I'm like, it could be anything. We'll never know.
Right.
Even if he dies, we won't know he's dead. And
right.
With technology these days, you can have somebody die and just pretend that they're still there.
Yeah.
I think
you mean like Joe Biden?
Well, even Joe or
Hillary Clinton. Right.
The Supreme Court's like that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything is fake. When you approach life these days thinking and knowing everything is potentially and probably fake, it makes you a little cynical about how events don't really lead to something else. Right. Events stand alone, then you can walk away.
Right.
Price of gold and silver don't move because of something. No. They move because the riggers click a mouse. Right. And that's it. That's the
and then they give you something to say, oh, that's why that happened after the fact.
Exactly.
Yeah. They backfill the explanation.
Yeah. The next day will be exactly the opposite. And it's like, wait, I thought yesterday you said one thing. It's like we have such a short-term memory, especially about financial reasons. And, why is the dollar strong, or why is... And I'm like, oh my God, the dollar is rigged on the derivative market just like everything else. Dollars are derivatives of dollars. There's, what is the dollar in the U.S. Constitution? It's a certain amount of silver, a certain amount of grains of silver is the U.S. dollar. Will we go back to that? I think we will. I think ultimately we will.
Before we go back on the financial stuff here, can I ask you about the mainstream news? And since the last debate, of course, it appears that the mainstream news suddenly see that Biden is senile, even though they tried to ignore it for the last number of years. And they were telling you and Jean-Claude and everybody else, no, those clips are out of context. He's sharp as a tack. He's on top of his game. He's better than before. He's exhausting all the junior staff in the White House because he's so vigorous. And now, of course, they're going completely the opposite direction. Do you think that's hitting a dent in some of the sleepers in North America, realizing, holy fuck, these guys were lying to us, and they knew they were lying to us for years. What else are they lying to us about? Do you see there's a big kind of rush of new people coming into the woo right now? Are you feeling it?
Yeah, I think people don't care anymore. A lot of people are just like, who cares? It doesn't matter. And we're getting to that point. I think we will when the banks crash. We won't even care about paying taxes anymore. Right. We'll hit that point. It's like, why would I pay taxes when they're taking my taxes and giving them to the Ukraine, and they're investing in FTX and coming back around to fund the Democratic election? It's like, holy crap. Why am I giving money to this machine?
But that's still a conspiracy theory that hasn't been proven.
I know.
Yet. I just had a strike removed here on YouTube a couple of weeks ago. It was a video from a couple of years ago on crypto. It was a banal kind of video in my view, but at the time we were being accused of inciting violence and promulgating dangerous conspiracy theories. Anyways, I got an email from YouTube saying, "Oh, we've relooked at your content, and actually, you weren't doing those things. So here's your video back." I thought that was interesting, and I wanted to know, like, why now? But why now? Of course, we're into the mix of this crazy changeover. Let's get back to the meat and potatoes here. So, in my interview with Cliff, we talked about two things. One, this BRICS seemingly wanting to announce whether they're serious or not about it. It was in the news that they wanted to, in September, announce this gold backed currency that would be 40% backed by gold and 60% backed by a basket of currencies of the BRICS nations. So that was happening. And in the context of that, too, we had the Saudis kind of threaten Europe here over the seized money from Russia going into Ukraine. And they said, hey, if you guys are going to do that, we're going to sell a whole bunch of Eurobonds. And so what Cliff was saying is in this interview is that it appears there's this huge banking warfare happening in the background. And we're all kind of going to be the victims of all of that somehow here because we're too small and these guys are making big moves in the background. And he suggested that the Webbot data in his last immediacy run was suggesting that it felt like the London bankers were either trying to compete with this new system that might be coming up in September to bring up something new, or at the very least, take those guys out of the game. And probably that's what we were seeing here with the huge banking issues in China. Now, whether that's true or not, you're seeing big changes in the financial system. We're seeing Trump now talking about Bitcoin in a big way here. We're seeing gold make some moves here this week in earnest. Again, putting pressure on the narrative that the dollar is still strong and all of this. Can you break that down a little bit here? What do you make of these big players, the fights that are happening now, and perhaps what are you telling the Road to Ruta fans on how to get out of harm's way here when these big titans are fighting over control here of this new financial system taking place? Bix.
Well, I have long said that there can't be any deciders in a new financial system. The reason a financial system fails is lack of trust in the system.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to trust the people who screwed up the first system, and you're not going to trust a new financial system created by them. So there can't be any deciders of what if there is a new financial system. At some point there might be, but the question is, how long are they going to prop up the bad one? The United States is clearly losing the battle, and we control the whole system. You know, we can pull the plug tomorrow if we wanted to. How long do we want to lose? China wants this thing to go on for forever because they're winning. You know, they're getting all the manufacturing plants built in China. They're getting all the natural resources. They're teaming up with every other country on the planet to get their natural resources out of the ground because the United States are such assholes, and they're coming in as, hey, we'll give you, workers and money, and we got all this stuff, and they have completely done it on the sly. They don't want this system to end. They love this system. They're bringing 1.4 billion people out of poverty. That's tough to do, and we're sticking 330 million into poverty in the United States. So I don't see a planned new financial system working at all. Just a brutal failure. Nothing will work. There'll be no CBDCs. There'll be no, even the BRICS backing 40%. It's like, who would agree to it? Who would even care? Truthfully.
Yeah, who's going to trust the auditing? Is there even auditing?
Yeah, who holds the metal?
Yeah,
exactly. It's kind of like the IMF. You ask the IMF who holds all the gold at the IMF. They don't know.
So you're still on page. You're still on page 2 with Bill Sinclair and Jim Sinclair, and to some extent the Webbot data also suggesting we might even have 3 reboots before we have a system that we all agree on.
Yeah, I don't think a reboot. I don't think any of the reboots.
Reset, reboot. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe a couple of attempts, but
call them that. Sure.
The actors who are playing the roles of the financial gurus, the IMF, the World Bank, the BIS, the Treasury, the Federal Reserve, and all. Nobody believes in them anymore.
Right.
So the fact that they are going to crash, and I think it will crash because of the derivative market, an unbacked fiat monetary system that was global. There have been monetary systems that have crashed in Germany and Argentina and in Venezuela, places like that, Zimbabwe. But there hasn't been a global unbacked fiat monetary system in human history. Yeah. And if you would have asked people 100 years ago, we're going to take out gold and silver from the monetary system. We're going to use pieces of paper, and the whole world's going to believe it. They would say, "You are freaking crazy. Are you the dumbest human on the planet?" And that's where we are right now. So
Yeah.
the reality of the control system that holds this shit together is controlled by people that no longer have the trust of the people, any of the people. So no,
we've learned that in earnest also in the last
Yeah.
couple of years here. We're still on YouTube, so I'm going to watch some of my language on that. But yeah, I'm with you. Now, going to the crash, a lot of analysts have suggested in the last couple of years that if we were to have the crash, we would need to have it before the Trump return, that it would need to be hung around Biden's head, so to speak. Now, in the last couple of days, we're hearing that Biden's almost out the door, and Barack Obama just in the last hour said, "Yeah, it's time to go." Schumer, Pelosi, everybody's suggesting the same, and there's other reports that he might be stepping down this weekend. So, in order to blame it on him, of course, before the election, we don't have that much time to go. So, do you see more of an imminent crash now? Do you see it after the election? What would be your timeline on this right now, as we stand now, if you're looking at all this?
Yeah, I've been saying for a long time that it'll happen before the election. But as of late, it might not. I mean, Trump is the biggest market rigger yet. He's done the best job at market rigging because everybody thought, "Oh my God, Trump turned the economy around." No, he just rigged all the other markets better than everybody else rigged all the markets.
Yeah.
That's my only beef with Trump, really.
Yeah.
And it goes against what America stands for, and it gets us into situations like we're in now, where nobody believes us, nobody trusts us, because we lie. We lie, cheat, and steal using computer programs written in the 1960s and 70s by Greenspan. And he created unbacked fiat money, and he controlled it and let it run. And then they created this thing called the derivative bubble, which is, I think, $3 quadrillion that will take out everything. If one of these big banks go, like if silver goes over $50, it'll take out one of the big banks, probably HSBC or JP Morgan or Citibank. They just can't get rid of their short position. They would love to be long silver, but that means somebody has to be short, and nobody in the right mind would short silver right now, with physical silver disappearing into these crazy solar panels that are going up all over the world.
Right.
So yeah, it can't happen. So what are they going to do? I don't know. We're coming to something, and that something might be the shutdown of all markets, all bank accounts, anything out of your own possession would be gone instantly. And then everybody would say, "Oh, fix the system, flood the system with money." But how do you do it when everybody has lost everything?
Is that why we're starting to see this rhetoric now returning to Bitcoin with Trump in the last couple of days? Well, actually, last month, I think, was the first salvo where he said, hey, he would accept Bitcoin for his campaign donations. And then he said, hey, he would be the crypto positive president in this campaign, suggesting that he would fight against the central bank issue, digital currency. A lot of people wanted to hear that. But here he's saying that he doesn't want to let China and other countries take over Bitcoin and the crypto industry. So he's promoting some type of open legislation here to favor innovation boom in crypto currencies here in North America. He's also going after Jamie Dimon, who you and I had a big beef with the last couple of years, telling everybody that Bitcoin was a fraud and he was going to fire anybody. And suddenly Jamie Dimon's changed his tune, and Trump is calling him out on that. But also here, RFK is into this. Now, what that was interesting, because in the last couple of days, we had the leak audio call of President Trump with RFK on the vaccine stuff. And so perhaps he's going to be tapped here moving forward for some type of investigation on Big Pharma. But in this particular clip, I thought it was interesting. RFK was suggesting that we could reinvigorate and re-democratize the U.S. economy by giving individuals power to hold their own wealth without dilution. So, of course, he's talking about working against the schemes of inflation of the central bank and giving people more autonomy. So the disintermediation that you and I have been talking about, suddenly this is now being spoken at the highest level here of this election debate that we're having now up until the fall. Do you think they're setting the stage here for the crash, and then to say, oh, see, we've been telling you all along, we have to go to this distributed ledger where we don't have to trust anybody. It's open ledger technology, and this is where we're going. Are we seeing the beginnings here, perhaps, of that? Is that what we're seeing? Or is this well, hold on. I need to finish this phrase, because a lot of people are telling me, and some of the detractors on the shows, and to some extent, we have to ask the question, and to be fair, Are we being played in by Trump here to kind of move into this sector of understanding and trust, only to be at the last minute, how do you call it, bait and switch back into a CBDC, and there you go, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, but worse than the old boss. Now we have a CBDC around our neck. Where's all this going, in your view, Biggs?
Well, when the system fails, I think, at least in the United States, we have a system already on the books in the Constitution. We have gold and silver to use as money. I do believe that since 1913, we've been looking for ways to get back to that. Absolutely. I believe it was instituted, the Federal Reserve System was instituted because they found massive amounts of gold back then. Massive amounts. Mm-hmm. Like not 200,000 ounces like guys like Jeff Christian will tell you, but millions of tons, 200,000 tons. It's millions of tons. There's so much gold out there. It is crazy how much gold there is. But we had to lie to people because back in early 1900, there was only in the United States about 100 million ounces of gold that were available as part of the monetary system and that people held. And in the world, there's, I think, 230 million ounces. And then they go find billions and billions of ounces of gold in the Grand Canyon and around the Grand Canyon, the banks of the Colorado River and other places. And they said, we can't do this. This would destroy governments. This would destroy the balance of wealth all around the world. We're going to create this thing called the Federal Reserve. It's going to create unbacked fiat money, and we're going to manage the changeover. Well, it was only supposed to last 10 years, and then it got renewed for another 10 years, and then 100 years. So we're at the end game of that. So how much gold and silver is out there? Nobody really knows. There's a hell of a lot more gold than there is silver. I guarantee you that. Yeah. We've used so much silver up in flat screen TVs and solar panels, electric cars, especially solar panels these days. I've been jumping up and down, screaming at everybody, look at the silver in the solar panels. I mean, last year we did 76% more solar panel installations than the year before, but somehow the Silver Institute came up with a 35% growth in the amount of silver used. And I said, that's impossible. That is 100% impossible. You're lying. You're cheating. You're stealing. You're lying to the public. Yeah. And they didn't do anything about it. And they know they're lying. And I've talked to the head of the Silver Institute. I've talked to the head of Metals Focus, who does the report. And I said, you guys can't do this. You're lying to everybody. But they said we can do whatever the fuck they want. Anything we want. No one's going to question it. Because people aren't that smart. They can't dive in and say, okay, how much silver is in an actual solar panel and how many solar panels are going up? So it's infuriating. But I do think, in the Road to Ruta documents, we do go back to a gold and silver standard. And it's already in the book, so we don't need deciders. It's already in our founding documents. That silver, the definition of the dollar is certain, 300 and some grains of silver. And the definition of a gold, definition of gold in the monetary system is 20 ounces of silver from the beginning. Now that changes.
So let's look at the rhetoric here, because I think you're on the right track. At some point here, and I don't believe that we're going to be using gold and silver for trade for a very long time. I think it's a bridge to perhaps something else. And perhaps this is why Trump is also talking about having Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. He's not necessarily saying that's going to be the national currency moving forward, but it's going to be part of some type of solution. Yet they're not talking about gold and silver just now, but we could be just around the corner to that as well. Do you think that that's the case and that's why he's positioning this way? Or is there something else behind the scene here that we still don't know what's going on?
I would say it is, I think the people are going to take back the creation of money, use what they want as money. So yeah, you can use cryptos as money. You can use gold and silver. You can even use pieces of paper that you print $1 on. Yeah. The power of money is going to return to the people because we can't trust those people we gave the power to. We never should have given them the power in the first place. So the power will return to the people. And yeah, I think cryptos are great for, standalone transactions and in using as money. I would caution people that the vast majority of people holding crypto right now is holding it through a third party at Coinbase or an ETF. Those will be gone when the system's gone. Don't ever expect to get that back. You either get it in your own possession with your own keys in your own possession, or you are screwed. Same with gold and silver. If it's not in your own possession, kiss it goodbye.
Totally agree with that. And that's why Joe and I have been working here the last 2 months to put out this new crypto crash course for beginners here. And we had Coco kind of slowing him down. She's very new to all of this on how to create your wallet safely, how to open up your exchange, how to load money on the exchange, make your first purchase, and then right there and then move that crypto out of the exchange into your own possession on your wallets. This course is going to be launched, I believe, on Sunday here. I'm putting the last touches to the editing, guys. If you're interested in that, go to beyondmystic.academy. There's a little button there that says get notified when the course is launched, but I believe it's going to be this Sunday here. So going back to these resets or these attempts, a lot of people are, I guess, nervous, rightly so, because these attempts suggest that there's going to be instability. And the question is how long that instability lasts and what are the unintended consequences of that instability. In some cases, people are saying, like Bill Holter has been on the show, you've said this before too, when credit stops, so too, for a period of time, does the supply chain, right? It works on credit. So what are you seeing in terms of instability? Are we talking about days, weeks, months, years? Where are we here in creating this brand new world for ourselves? How long does that take? Because again, we need to have an adult conversation about it, because it's one thing to say, "Oh, there's a new system, it's going to be better for humans at the end." Sure, but in the meantime, what do you do, and how do you transverse from here to there, and how do you bring your old hard-earned assets and wealth from the old system and bridge it into the new? That's a conversation we all need to have to be responsible for ourselves, our children's, and our loved ones. So, what do you expect this instability to look like as we stand here today?
Well, if you'd asked me in 1999 when I started this research, I would have said, "Oh shit, we're weeks, months away."
Yeah.
And they've been saying that. People in the know have been saying that since 1913 or even before. So yes, I mean it can end at any moment. The difference now, starting in the late 1990s, they allowed banks to hold derivatives in unlimited values and unlimited amounts, and we see the result of that is this derivative bubble that is so beyond big that any of the big holders pop, or even a mid-sized holder of derivatives goes boom, belly up, and can't fulfill their side of the derivative, then the entire thing comes crumbling down. That's a $750 billion unknown amount, truthfully unknown. JP Morgan's is at 56 trillion. I think it would be, there's a few things that I think would need to happen or should happen when the system falls apart. JP Morgan should get the blame, along with other bankers like HSBC should get the blame for silver. They have been the big deliverer of silver, meaning they are the big short in silver. That goes back 150, 170 years to the Opium Wars, when England set up HSBC as a way to funnel all the silver back into England that they were spending on, spices and teas and silks and stuff like that. So they got the Chinese people addicted to opium, and they went through the Opium Wars. But that was all about getting the silver back. So HSBC being the big short right now, I believe, and it's showing in the COMEX data, I think that would be appropriate for them to be the one to be taken out. And they're a massive, massive silver player. I believe they're running the hedge book for the U.S. Mint, which lost $110 million a couple of years ago when it should have gained money.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of gigantic players, and the question is the difference between now and, let's say, 2008 or back in, you can go any year between now and in the past 1913 of when they wanted to pull this trigger. The difference now is that we have the mechanism, that weapon of mass financial destruction known as the derivative market, that really could take out every checking account, every savings account, every 401k, anything not in your possession. That if the derivative bubble goes, one of the big player goes, everybody goes, and there's nothing left standing on that side. And I think the Road to Ruta documents that came out of the Fed, I think ultimately that's the key. And then we can easily go back. Most people don't have that problem of having too much money in the bank. The bankers do, so they'll lose bad. But most people have debt, and that debt will be gone as well. So probably for the majority of Americans, yeah, that's a good thing. And we're the largest debtor nation in the world, so obviously it's good for the United States.
And going back to the idea of the instability, are we talking about months, years, days, weeks? What do you think?
Oh,
I
you
know
mean
I'm trying to
what?
pin you on this
Well,
because
no.
people are telling me, well, JC, what do I need to prepare for? Am I prepared for 3 days of the banking system not working? Am I working at 6 months here trying to find a way to
Yeah.
barter with my neighbor? What am I looking at?
Well, there's a couple things. One thing I always go back to is, hey, this is not anything that's going to hit us from surprise in behind the the scenes in Washington. They've been planning for this. The Fed's been planning for this. The Treasury's been planning for this for over 100 years. There
Right.
are many plans in place. So I don't see Mad Max World coming. I don't. I
Good.
do see a couple weeks, couple months of lots of riots, lots of people saying, "You bastards, look what you've done to us." J.P.
Right.
Morgan, Citibank, all these banksters, you took my money, and then they'll go to their Congress people and say, and probably someone's writing about the quantum financial system. That's one of the biggest hoaxes pulled on humanity. Again, there's been so many of them, but no, there's no quantum financial system coming in to save the day. No XRP going to be laid out and say, oh yeah, everything's fine. No, it's not going to work. Like I said, no deciders, and ultimately, I think prepare for a month. If it goes past a month, you're gonna have to prepare to arm yourself and you're gonna fight it out. But a lot of people can't last a couple weeks, so definitely prepare and have a bug out plan if you live in the city. It's going to be hard, and the humanity has never gone through what we're about to go through. The
And
easiest place
as much as there's preparation, like you said too, we all agree as adults that there might be some unintended consequences, some stuff that hasn't been prepared for or accounted for. There's all of these over-the-counter derivatives and connections that we don't understand, so we have to be prepared and maybe go on the wider side of your preparation as opposed to on the smaller side.
But it also depends on where you are. For example, if
true.
you're in a third world country, it's not going to really affect you all that much.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to struggle for your food anyway, and
You don't have an EBT card. No, exactly.
yeah. And if you're in the United States, where everything, we live in a nanny state. Everything's taken care. If you don't have money, oh, we'll give you some money. If you don't have food, oh, we'll give you some food.
Right.
You're going to see rich people get really pissed off, but have no avenue because their money will be gone, just like the guy with the biggest debtor in the world. His debt's going to be gone.
Yeah.
So, and the bank's going to say, you still owe your mortgage, but we lost your savings account, your checking account, your 401k, but you still owe on your mortgage. It's like bullshit. Nothing's going to be repaid. That's right. It can't happen that way, and that's the reason they've kicked it down the road for over 100 years, and they're still kicking it. Will they continue past this election period? Truthfully, I don't think so. I think we've come to a point where it's just the bubbles are so big, and 2008, we were literally a couple hours away from what we're talking about right now, the end of the financial system.
Right.
And it was on September 11th in 2008 too. So it was purposefully done, I think, by the good guys.
Who was that Republican? Kenjorski? What was his name too?
Representative Kenjorski said, hey, on September 11th, he didn't say September 11th. He said last Thursday, which was September 11th. He said we were hours away from every single financial institution shutting down.
Yeah.
And we're there again, except it's bigger. It's bigger now, and what they
Some
do.
suggest 10 times, maybe 100 times bigger than it was in 2008 with all the money printing and all the distortions in the market ever since. Guys, if you're interested, there's a lot of people talking about Nera, Jacera, QFS, BS. If you're interested in this episode, Janine and I did a hard look at this as a 30-minute episode. We originally had done that for our IAP members, but suggested that we put it out for free here to the public. So you'll find that on our Rumble page if you want to get more information on that. Now, speaking of contingency plans, you were hot on the trail a little while back about some of these notches in the Silver Eagle program. Like when Lisa was also talking about these coin machines that seem to be appearing in our realm. So there's something happening in the background there too, connecting silver to perhaps a blockchain of sorts. Tie that in for the audience, maybe who haven't seen any of those episodes. What does that look like? And what are the fingerprints that we're starting to see here that there's something happening in the background there as well? Vix.
Yeah. So out of the blue, the U.S. Mint changed the silver and gold eagles, changed the back of them, changed the design, and put a little notch in the coin along the reeded edge. There's now a little space. And everybody was going, you cannot change, the most popular sovereign coin on the planet. You can't do it. You can't do it. And I talked with the head of sales at the Silver Eagle at the U.S. Mint. This guy named Jack Sermon. Great discussion if you want to know what's really going on there. But what he said was, it was David Ryder's vanity program. So David Ryder was the head of the director of the Mint back in the 90s, and then Trump brought him back in, and he was the director of the Mint, and he's the guy who made the decision we're going to do this. If you go back and look at what David Ryder did between his stints at the Mint, he worked for Honeywell. And Honeywell had invented a technology that can look at the crystalline structure of a coin at rapid speed and identify it. Because under a microscope, if you look at a coin, they're all different. They all look different. The crystalline structure of metal, when you zoom in, is different. And what Honeywell figured out how to do is to map that difference, and you can put it on a blockchain and say this coin has this structure, and put it into the software so that when it runs through a machine, it was an original coin made by the U.S. Mint. And that little notch is a positioner so that when it's reading the coin, it's always in the same exact spot. So that's what the notch is for. I used to think they were going to write some code in there. No, It's just for positioning.
Okay. But still suggesting here that there's a move being played to get some stability in the financial markets and
absolutely.
some authentication here in gold and silver, going back to at least the part of the constitutional money system here in play.
Yeah. And I do think they can't from there. Once you are able to do that, you can have gold and silver as money being transacted through a blockchain type of system where you have the identifier of each specific coin and just throw it on a blockchain that you trust. And then voila, you can go spend your gold and silver from your phone. I can spend 1/100th of an ounce of silver on my phone.
Right.
And that's a methodology to do that. And I think that was the plan until Biden got in. And when Biden got in, he was out, and they put in Ventures Gibson, who had never worked at the Mint before in her life. And she changed the diversity of the Mint, but everything else, listen to the discussion with the head of Silver Eagle Sales at roadtoruta.com, and you'll go, holy crap.
Yeah, that was a blockbuster. Kudos to you for that interview. Now, Trump talking about Bitcoin, but in the last number of years too, he's always been big on gold, and he's let some hints out before, and there appears to be people around him too that might be involved in this. I wanted to ask you quickly on the VP choice. Do you make heads or tails of that? Does it make sense? Is it a big distraction? Is it kind of like what we did with Fauci, bring somebody up to eventually bring them down? What's going on with the VP choice in your view?
Actually, Jenny and I talked about the VP choice too. It's kind of like that. I didn't like that he came from Yale, skull and bones type of guy, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad guy. Jenny had her own take, which is just, I was cracking up, and then I'm like, holy shit, maybe that's right. I don't think it's the right pick. And I don't think it'll be his pick come the election if we have an election.
Well, Janine pulled on this week also, and twice the reading said the same thing. He'll never make it to VP. Something else happens. It's going to be replaced.
I think he'll be good.
He's being put up there for another reason, another purpose for a period of time, and then something else. And it's funny, some of those boards that we're not allowed to mention here on YouTube, they were also suggesting that quite a while back. And now that first prediction comes to pass, and maybe the second one, they were talking about DeSantis. So I don't know. We'll see about that. But that could be another placeholder for something else a little bit further in, not as actual VP here moving forward. And also, I don't know if you heard my interview with 107 last week, but he suggested that he still thinks we're not going to have an election, that we're going to have.
I've been saying that for a long time.
Yeah. Pause or delayed election for a period of time, might have an interim government of sorts, maybe including the military, and then up to 4 years before we actually have whatever we call as a new fair election after that, after we've routed out all the criminality. So we have a long way.
What has our government done for us anyway? It's like,
well, that's a good point, right? There was a question in the chat, Bix, about silver itself. Let me bring up some of the specials here for the Beyond Mystic audience here, given by Miles Franklin. Guys, if you're looking at gold and silver, go to beyondmystic.net/silver if you fill out the form there below. Andy and his team will get back to you here and ship these to you in short order. Why is the junk silver so important, and why do you like it so much? Given the context here of what we're just saying, the financial crash here, the periods of instability, why is the constitutional silver, or what people call junk silver, so important in your view, Bix?
Well, I've gone through a lot of iterations of what it could mean to have a collapsing unbacked fiat monetary system and move back to a gold and silver standard. Given that silver is used mainly in industrial applications, there's going to have to be, if you use silver as money, there'll have to be a differentiation. Kind of like Cliff's two types of silver. One will be more valuable than the other. And I do think that the U.S. Mint has the legal authority, constitutional authority, to mint silver coins to use as money. There is a premium. I used to like them just because they're harder to counterfeit, because they're in smaller denominations, and you'd have to. It wouldn't make sense. You might do it for gold, but you wouldn't for a couple bucks worth of silver quarters and dimes and nickels. Well,
Right.
Nickels partially, but the reality of the laws are different too. Because if you fake
counterfeiting, absolutely.
Its counterfeiting laws are much stronger than the fraud laws.
Right.
And I think that'll be a huge thing going forward. Is this silver? Is it real silver, or is it molybdenum, which has almost the same density? That will be happening in the bars, especially with gold bars.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that we're going to have to do a huge remelt on any bars over 10 ounces when it comes to gold, and probably any bars over 100 ounces or at 100 ounces with silver, because I think you just don't know, and the scratch and sniff test doesn't really work. No. You're going to have to drill through the bar to see if it's full. And it's going to really hurt people holding gold and silver that you're not sure of. And that's when it gets to, you want to hold something that you can at least say, well, the U.S. Mint made this, especially if you get the Honeywell technology in there saying, there's a lot of reasons. I wouldn't go crazy.
I would add to that too, like recognizability for people and the normies waking up in a scenario where the banking system's down. They immediately recognize constitutional money. So that's also a plus there when you're trying to negotiate in these difficult transition periods of time. So I think that adds to
but that'd be such a short amount of time. I don't think that, I used that for a while. I'm like, say you got a couple big bags of constitutional money, junk coins. How many are you going to have to negotiate? Because they're not 100% silver. You're going to have to figure out how much silver is in each coin. And I bought a bunch of nickels that are like 40% silver because they were less than the melt. And I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm getting silver at less than the melt. And I'm like, well, who the hell's going to want this?
That's like if you buy the 68 dimes here in Canada, they're not the same amount of silver as the pre 65. Okay. I think we're where we wanted to go with this information today. Is there anything else you wanted to share that I didn't ask you today? Like, we're definitely in crazy times. We're definitely not months or years away anymore. I know you and I have made the same mistake for a number of years, thinking, "Oh my God, this is it."
How can it go? Yeah,
they're out of there's no more road to kick the can down. But when you look at all the vectors of everything that's happening right now, it's hard to argue. Another couple of years. We're here now, and that means big changes for the people, and that means that people are going to have to make big decisions also, that they can't delay this anymore if they haven't really looked at this for a while. So anything else I have to say, or maybe just words of advice here,
I think one of the biggest things going on, especially in silver, I've been a big silver fan for so many reasons for a long time, but the number one reason in the last year and a half is the industrial side of silver is absolutely exploding. So much silver is being used in solar panels and electric cars that it's more than 100%, I believe now, more than 100% of mined silver. This is not something that you'll see in the silver survey that the Silver Institute says. But from my calculations, absolutely the amount of silver going into solar panels is double or triple what they're telling you, which means it's up around 700 million ounces. And that's a hell of a lot of silver when they're only pulling out 820 or so out of the ground every year. And then there's all the other things that silver has to go in, your flat screen TV, your phones, And it's not even counting the silver investor. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so silver is such a tiny market and so massively important. If you get your head around this Green New Deal, especially, I mean, it can't happen. And they're finding out, they're going to find out one day when the silver market, the silver rigging on the COMEX ends, you're going to see silver go from $30 or $50 to $500, $600 to $2,000. All of a sudden, the manufacturing of solar panels will have to change. It won't end because they can make solar panels without silver, but they're not as efficient. They're not any good. They won't do that until they have to, and they won't have to probably until after $100 an ounce silver. So if you're thinking of getting your silver, don't mess with any of the ETFs. Don't mess with any of the mining companies. Those will all be nationalized. Get the physical silver, get it in your own possession, and just wait.
And speaking of education, knowledge is key also. We are moving into this world of decentralized government, decentralized teaching, decentralized everything. And that includes the financial system here after all of these different tries that humanity is going to put together. So, why is it important at this time to look at educating yourself on how to use cryptocurrencies in the most safe and effective manner, Bix? What would you tell people who haven't looked at this yet?
I would say, the thing I've been in cryptos a very long time, 2013. I would say look at what they can do. I get that people like to watch the price of Bitcoin going up and down. That's fine. I'm a big advocate of Theta. Theta is changing the way that people share not data but their hardware. And the big problem with AI is there's not enough storage capacity. There's not enough computation capacity. There's not enough broadband. Everybody has that on their devices and they can share it. And Theta invented a patented way to do that, to
Mhm.
share your broadband, to share your storage capacity, to share your processing speed. And talking to Jenny just today, there was another thing gigantic coming. So in September, Theta is releasing their mobile edge node. So every single Android phone can be sharing their data and earning T fuel on their phone. And Jenny's like, you know what the big thing will be? And I say, oh yeah, I know. It's a hard drive. It's expanding broadband. It's expanding, the processing speed. She says, no, it's power. You can share the battery power you have for AI in your local areas. Power is a gigantic problem for AI looking out into the future. I'm reading all kinds of stuff on AI now, and it's like, well, we don't have enough storage capacity. Amazon just has so much, Google has so much, and they've all partnered with Theta because they see the future, and it will be holy shit. One day, Theta will go from $1.30 that it is now to what Michelle White Dove was saying. It's going to go into the thousands of dollars.
I think her ultimate number was 4,000 in some of
Yeah,
the predictions.
yeah. And I didn't get it at the time. I
Yeah.
still bought it just because she's the best psychic in the world.
Yeah.
But I didn't get it. But now I can see it. It's obvious, and it
Well,
is.
it's going to create a lot of solutions to the problems in our world right
Yeah.
now. And I think that's where Cliff High is correct. Also, after this kind of weird period of time, we unleashed this huge innovation boom across the planet. And that's very exciting and positive for each and every one of us because all of this now, we can come to the table with actual solutions to problems in the world. And crypto, a lot of them do in fact do that. Guys, if you're interested in the crypto crash course, go to beyondmystic.academy. Here at the bottom of the page, you'll see the waiting list form here, so you'll be notified as soon as I launch this. I believe again, Joe and I are going to be launching this this Sunday if I can finish all the editing here of the videos. In the meantime, of course, you can support the amazing Bix Weir here at roadtoruta.com. What's coming up here? What's free on the content, and what do you have for the private road audience members here, Bix?
Yeah, if you scroll down, you'll see the discussion I had with Jack Sermon at the U.S. Mint, and all those red marks are the Silver Institute changing. If you go up one more,
Oop.
right there, and one more than that, the Silver Institute has a yearly publication called the Silver Survey. Every one of those red boxes is them changing their numbers to fit a narrative. They're changing history, and I circle them all. I go, this is just ridiculous. These people put out these numbers, and they're the only ones who put it out. And they're quoted on MSNBC and the financial gurus and saying, well, we're using 200 million ounces of silver and solar. I'm like, no, it's 400 million. It's going to 600 million.
It's crazy.
So, Yeah, it's a lot of fun there.
It's kind of like the jobs report. They're all being
Oh my God, yeah.
revalued downwards because they were all fake. And of course, reality eventually
Yes.
comes out and asserts itself. Guys, you can support Bix here at roadtoruda.com. And you can also find him on his YouTube channel of the same name here, Road to Ruda. Thank you so much, Biggs, for being here today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I did get a quick message from Andy. We had a bit of a snafu time a difference here in our meeting, so we'll get Andy back. Don't you worry, next week for the next edition of the Beyond the Vault edition. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Au revoir.
Au revoir.